Enough of that. Anyway, what is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Fantasy Nuts UK show here on YouTube. Last week, I was joined by Kev White of the Fantasy Wildcard Dynasty show. We had a good laugh, and mostly at my expense, him being an Eagles fan and obviously me being a Vikings fan. Jalen Hurts QB one season, maybe. We spoke about much more. Head over to the channel, subscribe, and give that a watch. But tonight, I am joined by the host of the Steve Rains show. He's the commissioner of, it's an amazing charity tournament in aid of cancer research in memory of his close friend, the Steve Rains Bowl, and DFS guru, plus former champion of the 5-yard rush FFCC tournament. Jack, what is going on, mate?
That was some intro, that, mate. I'll correct you on one thing. I was the first ever champion of the FFCC, actually. So yeah, I'll correct you on that one.
Hold my hands up. The first.
Yeah, that was some intro. Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks, Lewis. How are you?
Yeah, all good this end, mate.
Good. Yeah, and DFS guru. I don't know about that, but we're getting there. We're getting closer each week at the minute.
So yeah, if you don't follow Jack, he'll tell you all about it himself, I suppose. But across multiple sports, not just NFL, and that's what we mostly talk about here with the fantasy football, but golf, even UFC. I've seen you trickle in a little bit. Obviously, yeah. FPL. He knows his stuff. So what have you been up to, mate, anyway?
Yeah, no, it's been busy. Obviously, it's a busy time of the year with the NFL back now. So I'm writing for touchdown tips on their website. You can get all my DraftKings plays and my player pools, and I run down loads of different sort of strategies on there at the minute. It's quite an in-depth article. It takes me a week to write that article. I've decided that I'm going to do 2 this week because we've got the London game, so I'm going to do 2 articles this week. So yeah, I do that, and then obviously I'll do my golf stuff, which DFS. That's kind of slowed down a little bit because golf doesn't have an off season. It's really weird. Golf it just keeps going and going and going. So now we're in the full swing, which is technically the start of the new 2022-23 season. So yeah, I will get back to writing about golf eventually, but obviously the NFL is going to take up a bit of my time at the minute. And to be fair, with the golf that's being played at the minute, there's not a lot of the big stars that are turning up at these tournaments anyway. So just more of these like younger stars who will show promise and probably be big stars next year in golf. So yeah, I write a lot about golf and, like you say, other sports as well. I just love sports. Sports mad.
That is it. It's fantastic. I mean, I obviously subscribe to your Substack where you give all your hints and tips and stuff for DFS as well. And in the build up to when it was well and truly best ball season on DraftKings, in the build up to that for NFL starting, like the DFS, I did nick a few tickets for week 1 from, checking out your little Substack, what you had going on and on the golf. Yeah, and I don't know a thing about golf. It just looks like a bit of a walk, to be honest. That's all it seems to me. I really no idea, but yeah, nicked myself a few tickets for week 1.
I was very close last week. I nearly had it was the President's Cup in golf, which is basically the Ryder Cup, but it's the rest of the world, excluding Europe versus America. I was very close to having a massive takedown on that last week. Unfortunately, it didn't get over the line with golf. That's the thing with golf. It's so random because you get all these bonus placing points and things like that on DraftKings. But I am getting close. I can feel one coming. Put it that way. So yeah, if you want to come and follow my stuff, just come check it out.
Yeah, but let's kick things off anyway. A little bit different to what I've done in the last couple of weeks, but we're going to do a lowdown of the season so far rather than just of the previous weeks. So through the first 3 weeks, there's been so many shocks and surprises in both, obviously, real life NFL games and fantasy football. But who's the team that has surprised you the most this season so far?
That'd be the Jaguars, actually. They just look all-round solid unit on both offense and defense. Trevor Lawrence has made a real step up this year. That is the Trevor Lawrence that I remember at Clemson. He got taken number 1 overall. He's that good. Like I said it when he was coming out. Like Trevor Lawrence is a generational talent. Like, I don't use that a lot. I said this guy's like Andrew Luck when he came out of college. This guy is really good. And then what happened? He got put with Urban Meyer, and it's amazing the transformation. Like, thank God Urban Meyer went and done what he done, because I mean, all last year I was banging the drum. I was like, get Urban Meyer away from Trevor Lawrence because he's just destroying this kid. And we've seen that in the past with some of these QBs that come out that perhaps are not as solid mentally, maybe, and they get affected by like bad coaching and things, and it just lays with them for the rest of their career. And thankfully for Trevor Lawrence, he's now got a very good coach behind him in Doug Peterson. I'm just so impressed with this team all round. I mean, I thought they'd beat the Chargers last week just because of Justin Herbert's injury. I was all over the Jaguars defense in DFS, for example, in that game, because I didn't see how Justin Herbert could play in that game. I mean, I was really impressed with what he'd done with the injury that he's got. But James Robinson, just coming off, running backs do not come off that injury that he had last year, that ACL injury, that quickly and look that good. And he looks amazing. He just looks like he's had no days off, like he's missed no time, so to speak. There's so many things with this team, like Christian Kirk. I bet Arizona wish they had Christian Kirk back now. Just like like for fantasy, he's going to be a PPR monster because he's just getting reception after reception after reception, turning them into touchdowns. I went on a podcast last week and I sort of went at Kingsbury a bit at Arizona because the Jaguars are using Christian Kirk how he should have always been used. Everyone knew Christian Kirk was a slot receiver coming out of college, and the Cardinals never used him like that. And then he's gone to the Jaguars this year. He got paid way too much for my liking, but he's proven that he's a solid wide receiver 1 on that team, which I am really impressed. They will win this division. There's no other team in that division that they should fear. The Texans are awful. I still think the Titans are a really bad football team. Outside of Derrick Henry, I just think they're a terrible team all round. And the Colts, I mean, you've got Matt Ryan at quarterback, who for me is dust at the minute. So the Jaguars will win this division. And I wouldn't be surprised if they stay healthy. I wouldn't be surprised if they make a playoff run. I don't think they could make the Super Bowl because I think the AFC conference is just too strong. But I think they'll make a little run in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I there's so much there I agree with, and I can add to as well. Like, I think whoever comes out the AFC, regardless, is probably going to win the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
the NFC doesn't. It's not it this year, and like you mentioned with James Robinson's injury, how he's come back. Cam Akers was back in such a quick time, but he is not doing it.
Yep.
From something either the same or very similar. I don't know the exact ins and outs right now because I haven't looked into it. And like you say with Christian Kirk, where he was drafted, he is going to turn out to be the value in fantasy football this year overall. If he keeps getting this amount of volume from Trevor Lawrence, who, like you say, now he's away from Urban Meyer, Doug Peterson is using him properly, and he will be the value. Like the way Marquise Brown was going about 2-3 rounds before him, all off season, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Like you said with Cliff Kingsbury as well. With it's almost like he tries to be too negative with it. Like let Kyler go. Like let him do what he can do. And
I watched the Cardinals a bit last week, and I put something out on Twitter. I just said, I don't know how Cardinals fans put up with that. That would infuriate me watching. I'm a Giants fan, so I'm used to watching bad football, like really bad football. But the way Kingsbury sets that team up would infuriate me. Like you've got guys out there running routes like Andy Isabella. Like just stop it now. Stop trying to make Andy Isabella a thing. He's never going to be a thing in the NFL. And then, you got guys out there like Greg Dortch who's making plays. Just give that guy the ball. Just get the ball to that guy. And like you say, we say it about Russ, let Kyler cook. Literally, let him cook, and you'll be a better football team. I'm still waiting to see that air raid offense in Arizona. I could go on a tangent. I went mental about Arizona last week, and they're a favourite of mine to pick on in DFS. I will pick on them for the rest of the year in DFS because their defense is horrible.
Yeah, it's not good. Their defense is not good, and like you say with Kyler, like with the air raid and things like that, like if they let him go from the minute he touches the ball in the first quarter, they have got such a competent running back in James Conner. Plus, with Eno Benjamin and Darrell Williams, there are both decent backups to keep Conner healthy.
Yeah.
Where if they've got a lead, they will keep it with those guys as well. But I'm going from, well, you went sort of positive to negative anyway, and I'm going to stay with the negative, and mine's Las Vegas Raiders. Like, they've been unbelievably underwhelming as well. After signing one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL, Devontae Adams, they're 0-3 in one of the toughest divisions in the league. I think it was Bet365, but not 100% off the top of my head. It was one of the sites anyway. They had them 1-5 on now to miss the playoffs after 3 weeks. And so many people, so many in this offseason on Twitter and things like that, fancied them to win the division. And they've just been nothing.
I think the issue with the Raiders and is I'm going to pick on Derek Carr a little bit. I just don't think he's good enough. Like in that division with the Chiefs, you've got to be able to score. You have to be able to put points up on the board. Like you said, they went out and got the wide receiver one in all of football, probably in Devontae Adams. I have question marks about that. I made a bit of a hot take last week on a pod, said that Cooper Kupp was better than him. But it may be a hot take, it might not be, but that's my.
I mean, with there's a few guys that you can literally pick any different day of the week to be the one, but he's definitely up there anyway.
Yeah. Again, just my opinion with that. I just think it'll come back to the quarterback situation in Las Vegas. I nearly called him Oakland then. It'll come back to the quarterback situation in Las Vegas with Derek Carr. I don't think he's competent, don't get me wrong, but I think he's probably the wrong quarterback for that division, especially in the AFC West. I just don't think he's good enough to put up 30 to 40 points a game. And I mean, I can't remember, when was it, about 4 years ago, that they had made the playoffs and then they left him in and he got that really bad injury. They'd made the playoffs and basically they played him in a meaningless game, and they left him in and he got injured at the end of the game. So that he didn't start in the playoffs, and then they got absolutely. They played the Texans in the first round of the playoffs and got absolutely whacked by the Texans.
Who was it that started in the playoffs now? I can remember it now you've mentioned it.
The quarterback.
Yeah.
It wasn't Colt McCoy, was it?
It could be, actually, yeah.
Or was it? It weren't Cooper Rush, I don't think.
No. It weren't Cooper Rush.
It might have been Colt McCoy.
Could be Colt McCoy, yeah.
But Derek Carr was in a bit of a heater that season. He actually looked like that Derek Carr could have probably put up 30 to 40 points a game. I don't think this version of Derek Carr can. And I think that's where the Raiders' problems will just ultimately lie. And the verdict for me will still be out on Josh McDaniels. The bad coaching the other week against the Cardinals. They just come out flat in that second half. And I know Kyler sort of tore them up a little bit in that game. I actually backed them to beat the Titans because I've really not been impressed with the Titans at all this season.
And then everybody turned up for the Titans this one game.
Yeah, and everyone turned up for the Titans. So it just, I don't know, bad coaching. Maybe it's just a bad culture there in Las Vegas. Maybe the players just don't care. It's probably like, it could be just one of them places where players just go, just have a last party, so to speak. I don't really know, but I never really fancied them. You're in a division with the Chiefs and the Chargers, who will put up 30 to 40 points a game. And I just don't see Derek Carr being able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you see as well, like Derek Carr always does it every season in a game here, a game there, maybe a couple games span, and he will, and he'll be fantastic, and he'll look really good. And I thought myself this off season, getting Adams, and then he's got Waller back from injury, Hunter Renfro with a breakout last year, and things like that. And I thought, you know what, this is his time to prove that actually, you know what, I can do this every week and things, but no, not through 3 weeks. Really disappointing.
McDaniels has also gone there with that Patriot rotation at running back, hasn't he? Like I took a lot of Brandon Bolden at the back end of best ball drafts on DraftKings just because I knew it'd get used in the passing work, and it's proven. It's just I haven't got the snap share in front of me. I'm sure Jacobs is running away with the snap share, but the rotation is just you've got a competent, solid back that can do the lot, and I don't get it with like trying to make these guys a thing in Brandon Bolden and Abdullah and the Broncos are another team. Like Mike Boone was getting touches the other day. What are you doing?
Yeah.
You've got Nate Williams and Melvin Gordon. What are you doing? So
it was hilarious in a group chat the other week. I think it was before week 2, and I tipped Mike Boone to get a touchdown or something like that. And it's like, because it would not surprise you with them, and with Hackett running the show there, even they're questionable. Yeah. I think it will be the Chiefs and the Chargers coming out of that one.
Anyway. It depends with Justin Herbert. See how bad that injury is, because that is a bad injury he's got, and they can't stay healthy, the Chargers, at all. I mean, Keenan Allen, he'll be back this week, won't he? But
I think even Joey Bosa had an issue on Sunday as well.
He did, yeah. So,
but let's carry on anyway. My biggest fantasy football surprise this season has been Curtis Samuel. Now, not this off season, the one before, I was all in. Obviously, he got hurt and things like that. But this year, through 3 games, 30 targets, 22 catches, 181 yards and 2 touchdowns, Through 3 weeks, he's the wide receiver 10 in PPR, plus that Debo-esque sort of role. He's had 8 rushes only so far, but 51 yards on the ground, yards after catch, he's a monster. Carson Wentz seems to like him, and he needs as many friends as he can to stay relevant, I suppose. But who's your fantasy football surprise package, good or bad, Jack?
Just before I move on, you're a good shout on Curtis Samuel there. I love Curtis Samuel coming out when he was drafted in Carolina. It's fine. It's good to see him getting used how I thought he would get used in the NFL. And like you say, Carson Wentz needs all the friends he can get.
I mean, I thought the trade to Washington was all right as well. That's why I was more in last year than this year.
Yeah, I mean, he was injured all of last year, wasn't he? So pretty much he might have played one game or something. But I love. He is kind of like that Debo Samuel-esque type of receiver, and you can use him as a gadget sort of player. And I really liked him coming out, and it's nice to see him finally produce. I've got a lot of dynasty shares of Curtis Samuel, so it's nice to see. My biggest, I wouldn't call it a surprise, but it's nice to see as a Giants fan, is Saquon Barkley. He looks back to Penn State Saquon Barkley. He looks, dare I say it, I think this is the best I've ever seen him in the NFL. Even the rookie year, I honestly believe that he's averaging 6 yards per carry, and that is behind one of the worst O-lines in the league. Like,
awful,
if you watch the Giants, I know the Bengals, there's question marks in regards to their O-line. I think the Giants O-line is just as bad, if not worse, probably. He's got 317 rushing yards through 3 weeks, with 2 touchdowns and 91 receiving yards. He's the RB1 through 3 weeks in fantasy, and it looks like there's no sign of that slowing down. And I don't think it's going to slow down. You've got an injury to Sterling Shepard now. The wide receiver core there is just horrible. Richie James and David Seals, and it's just no one's. I mean, Kenny Golladay can't even get a look in it at the minute, and he had that awful drop against the Cowboys on Monday Night Football. Kenny Golladay, and just probably not doing himself any favors there. You got Bellinger, the young tight end, who I think will produce eventually, but it's going to be the Saquon Barkley show. And I said it last week, the Giants season will rely on Saquon Barkley. I'm hoping that he stays healthy enough that I actually get to see him in the flesh next week in London. So live. So I'm hoping
Yeah,
it's be enough. But yeah, he's just. This is what I expected of him when he come out, but he's just been plagued by injuries, and I'm hoping he doesn't get another one.
yeah, like you say, with the injuries and like Sterling Shepherd, it's such a shame about him because with Daniel Jones at quarterback, he's not it for me, regardless. Brian DeBoll and like the GM and stuff wanted to give him, come on, it's your turn, right? We're gonna provide you with the tools and the protection and everything you need. The protection's still rubbish.
Yeah.
Sterling Shepherd looked like the only tool outside of Saquon that could help him. And he was, like you say, with Christian Kirk earlier, he was getting the volume this year, and it is a shame he's got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, Shepard's another one. He can't stay healthy. I'd be very surprised if he's back with the Giants next year. Not because of his ability. Like he's clearly got the ability, just he can't stay healthy. And you can't rely on players like that. It's just I mean, you're talking to me here. Like Daniel Jones is, I didn't want him back this year, and obviously they brought him back. I he infuriates me. Like I literally refuse to watch Giants games because Daniel Jones infuriates me. Now it's got better this year from what I've seen under Dable because Dable is a bit more attack minded. But when it's under like Joe Judge, and people like that, and all you see is these like 4-yard dump offs every time from Daniel Jones, it's the most boring thing to watch ever. The guy I just don't think he's good. He might be. I think he'd probably be a good backup in the league, definitely, but he's not a starter in this league for me. Can I ask you a question? Have you got concerns? I mean, I don't know how many shares of this player you have, but I've got huge concerns over Jonathan Taylor
Oof.
for fantasy, and I tell you why. I mean, currently he's the fantasy RB10, but my concerns with him. Obviously, that's no good if you drafted him as the fantasy. Well, a lot of people drafted him as the 101. So
Everybody.
that's not a good start. My concern with him, and this is why I never draft. Well, I never used to draft Derrick Henry, is because these players get game scripted out very quickly. Whereas the likes of we just mentioned a player there who doesn't get game scripted out. Saquon Barkley doesn't get game scripted out of a game because he's very good in the receiving part of the work. So is Christian McCaffrey. I have huge concerns with Jonathan Taylor just because he doesn't get used in that receiving area of the field a lot because they've got Naheem Hines, who's very, very good back.
Very good pass
Right.
catcher, yeah.
And I am now starting to. They're obviously very different in stature, the players, but I'm now looking at Jonathan Taylor in the same eyes that I look at Derrick Henry for fantasy. And Derrick Henry made me, he kicked me one like a few times because he has them games where he can go for like 200 yards rushing, but that's only if the team are up. And I don't think the Colts are going to be up a lot this year. From what I've seen so far, they look awful.
I mean, like you say with Derrick Henry, he will burn you. Like
Yeah.
you will be burned by either fading him or drafting him too early. And potentially, I mean, it's early doors this year. When we're around week 12, 13 maybe, or as we're approaching the double figure weeks even, we'll see a bit more how Jonathan Taylor's usage changes. But if he does go that same kind of way like Derrick Henry, he will be middle of the first RB from here until the end. And it's as simple as that. But like I think the difference between him and CMC, a lot of it was due to the injuries CMC had, and that's why Taylor was like the consensus 101 for all of the off season. And then closer to the season, we got other people was starting to take CMC or the odd Eckler sprinkled in, maybe.
I was taking CMC 101 on every draft. I don't care about the injury history. You can't predict that sort of thing. I had these concerns with Jonathan Taylor before the season started. I thought the Colts might be bad because I thought Matt Ryan was done. And so far through 3 weeks, I still think he's done. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with Jonathan Taylor at the minute. He's not a player. I've got to be careful how I say this because people might take it the wrong way. I didn't not like him when he came out of college, but I had issues when he came out of college because he was one of these running backs that got a heavy workload in
Yeah.
college. And I've seen guys like this before, like Royce Freeman was another one. It's a bad comparison because they're obviously two completely different running backs, and one is much better than the other. Jonathan Taylor's but Royce Freeman was used a hell of a lot in Oregon when he was in college, and obviously coming to the league didn't do anything. Now Jonathan Taylor's obviously proven that he can cut it in the league, but I'm wondering if they're scaling back the work because of what he done in college, and they don't want to burn out. They just don't want to burn him out so quick. And
Yeah, like you're worried about the shelf life. You're worried about the tread on the tires. His last 2 years of college, he had over 2,000 yards, and like
yeah,
I completely understand the worry and potentially the Colts worry with that because they want to keep him as long as they can at Jonathan Taylor's best. But let's jump into a weekly segment we always do. It's the rookie rock stars and who blew them bloody doors off for you in week 3, Jack.
well, you nicked mine, to be fair. So I won't say the guy that you've nicked off mine, but he did, and I had him in DFS. So yeah, it works out quite nice. But Romeo Dobbs of the Packers, he seems to have got Aaron Rodgers' trust, which is crucial for any rookie wide receiver. I mean, I'm not really sure Aaron Rodgers had much of a choice because that wide receiver core of the Packers is horrid, really. I mean, you've got Sammy Watkins is out for the year now. Cobb's still there, isn't he, doing bits and pieces? Is it Watson, the other rookie receiver they took?
Yeah, drop that 75-yarder week
Yeah,
1.
yeah, he dropped that big bomb, didn't he, in week 1, and then that was it. Like, you have to earn Rodgers' trust. And Romeo Dobbs seems to have done 8 receptions against Tampa, 73 yards, and a touchdown. I mean, Tampa got good defense as well, so that was good to see. And it might be a hot take. If this continues, I think he'll be a top. We'll say top 20. I think he'll be a top 20 fantasy wide receiver come the end of the year if this continues.
I've got no issue with you saying that whatsoever. I'm not saying I completely agree. If we see this again this week, then
Yeah.
I'm going to get a little bit more on board because, I was really impressed with Dobbs this week. He had 5 targets week 1, but the Vikings dismantled the Packers.
Yeah.
Week 2, he played 37% of the snaps. He only had 3 targets. Week 3, he stepped up 21.3 points, only behind who I'm going to talk about in a minute. But 89% of the snaps, he was 8 from 8, 73 yards and a touchdown, like you said. He's only not caught 2 of 16 targets.
Yeah.
The thing he says about Rodgers' trust, Christian Watson dropped that. That was a touchdown.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It went right through his hands. It was like he had oven gloves on.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Dobbs could have been nothing now if Watson caught that pass.
But
And
we've seen that in the past with Rodgers as well. Like these rookie wide receivers that the Packers draft drop the ball. Like St. Brown was another one. Valdez Scantling. It took years for Valdez Scantling to get Rodgers' trust in that offense. And obviously they didn't even keep him around. So maybe Rodgers didn't think much of Valdez Scantling. I don't know. I think it's a big thing. If you can get his trust, then like Dobbs seems to have, like you say, if we see it this week, I could very well see him being the top 20 fantasy wide receiver at the end of the year.
And if you haven't gone and picked him up off your waiver wire this week and you're in a league with me, he will not be there. But it's another mini victory lap, the same as last week, because I'm 2 from 2 for these predictions. And sorry if I nicked this one, Jack, but Chris Olave, I touted it last week and he absolutely smashed it this week. We mentioned last week with Kev about the amount of routes he was running, the snap share, 365 air yards in week 2. And now he's produced 13 targets, which was the same as week 2. So he's the target leader on that offense now. He's done it 2 weeks on the trot, but 9 receptions instead of 5. 147 yards instead of 80. He just needs that touchdown. Obviously, we got Jameis. He's still throwing picks for fun, and I'd say the floor isn't the safest with Olave, but if you've got him in a best ball, then you're potentially laughing for the rest of this year.
Yeah, 100%. I'm looking forward to watching him this week, actually. Just because their wide receiver core's beat up, isn't it? At the minute, Thomas is
Yeah.
Got a little ding. I don't know if he's going to be good to go. So is Landry. We know Kamara's had a few injury problems to start the season as well. Jameis is playing with a broken back pretty much, I think, at the minute. He's like you say, Jameis will just fling the ball around for fun. We know what he'll do. If you've got him in fantasy, just play him. Don't watch the game. It's that way. That's the way you got to be with it. Like some of these quarterbacks, just play him and don't watch because he'll get there, but it won't be pretty.
I've seen an injury report not long before we came on, actually, and I forgot to say it to you before we went live. But Jameis, MT, and Landry all wasn't seen practicing today.
I
Don't
can
know if
understand the
they're
Jameis one because I think literally, the guy's playing with like some broken back pretty much.
pretty much.
So I can understand him not practicing. The other two, it doesn't worry me just yet. It'll worry me. What day are we on today? Wednesday. It'll worry me tomorrow if they don't practice tomorrow.
Yeah, because it's more of acclimatizing as well.
Yeah.
Which it's a really short week for them with the time difference and things like that. It's going to seem like it anyway.
They flew straight over, didn't they? As well, they literally flew from Carolina straight over. They were awful against the Panthers, and the Panthers are a bad team as well.
Yeah, they've not really got much going on offense
No.
this season so far, I'd say. But based on what we know so far, 3 weeks in, not a lot. But we talk about who we're touting now for week 4. So who's going to have that breakout game, or potentially a player that's already produced and you're high on them for week 4. So your DFS knowledge will come into this one. The pressure's on me, so I'll tee it up after going 2 from 2. And I'm saying Breece Hall. Now, he's the RB17 after 3 weeks, just under 12.5 PPR points per game. But he's seen the most snaps he's had so far in week 3 against Cincinnati, 51%. His most carries so far, only 8. But with Zach Wilson being back, obviously things can change with a different quarterback. And his most targets, after not really being used in week 2 in the passing game, he had 11. And 90 plus scrimmage yards against Cincinnati. But then now we move on to look who they're facing. Pittsburgh. So Mixon had 145 scrimmage yards. Damian Harris had 87 scrimmage yards and a touchdown. Stevenson had over 50 scrimmage yards. And then you had Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt after that, which is another duo that you don't really want to face if you're not very good at against running backs. 113 rushing yards Chubb had with a touchdown, and Hunt had 61 scrimmage yards. Carter will be mixed in, of course, but for me, Breece's receiving upside he's shown so far for PPR. This is his week.
Yeah, again, you've nicked the pick that I wanted. I will have a bit of Breece Hall in the in my DFS lineups this week. I don't know if you mentioned there, but he actually outsnapped. He played more. He was on the field more than Carter last week, so there seemed to be a turn because it'd been Carter before that for the first couple of weeks. So there seemed to be a turn in the tide there, and maybe the Jets realised that they need to get him involved more. I like him. He will, like you mentioned there, Pittsburgh. You can run on Pittsburgh, and I think what's going to be done. Well, he's still out, isn't he? Injured, so
yeah.
You can definitely run on this unit. So yeah, I like Breece Hall. Again, you nick my player. He will definitely be in a few of my DFS lineups this week.
Who have you got for week 4, Jack? Outside of Breece Hall.
But yeah, I've gone with Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. So London's had at least 54 yards in each of these first 3 games with 25 targets and 2 touchdowns. He's showing the ability to make plays after the catch, as he did on his touchdown in week 3. But he's also making them big deep like downfield plays that they like to set up. This week, sorry, he's going up against the Browns, and we saw what Garrett Wilson done to this Browns unit. A lot of people fear the Browns defense. I don't think there's a lot to fear with it, to be fair. Garrett Wilson tore them up in week 2, I believe. Week 2. Garrett Wilson went for 102 yards and 2 touchdowns. And everyone kind of knows what is going to happen with the Falcons. So a lot of the teams, I mean, Seattle didn't, so this is a bad example, but a lot of the teams will focus on Kyle Pitts. They treat Kyle Pitts as the one. I don't think he is the one. I think Drake London is the one. But so you see a lot of double teaming on Kyle Pitts, which will allow Drake London just to get open. And I think he'll go nuts in this game against Cleveland. This game, actually, I'm on it for DFS purposes as a sneaky, because it's on the slate, and so is that Ravens-Bills game, which everyone have just flocked to that. I'm going to try and come away from it in larger field tournaments. And because the Browns have been putting up points as well in games, they're putting up 20, 30 points per game. So I think I haven't looked at the over-under total for this game yet, but I think I'll be having the over on the game because Atlanta put up points as well at will. And you have to respect them because you've got a very capable running back in Patterson, and then you've got a quarterback who will run the ball as well. So you have to respect that. They're very hard to defend. The only thing that I've kind of seen for the first few weeks, except for that Seattle game, is people just focusing on Kyle Pitts constantly, and which is probably why we've seen the early breakout from Drake London so far this season. I think that will continue against the Browns this week.
Yeah, I mean, I said exactly the same last week. Drake London is doing everything we expected from Kyle Pitts.
Yep.
And for every reason you mentioned is why I touted Garrett Wilson for week 2.
Yep.
Like, Pitts will be double covered. Drake London will have the single coverage when it matters, and absolutely. But it's London Games week. Now, my Minnesota Vikings are taking on the New Orleans Saints at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this Sunday. The first of 3 matches we have in the UK this season. Now, number 1, are you going? Number 2, what do you think of the game? Hot takes, predictions. What do you think is going to happen, Jack?
So the first one, yes, I am going. I'm not sure what state I'll be in by the time the game starts, but yes, I am going. What do I think of the game? I'm looking forward to it. I've seen these two play live before, so it doesn't really matter for me for these two. But the time this sort of international series ends this year, I would have seen 31 of the 32 teams live. So I'm nearly there. I've nearly got the set.
Very nice.
It's nice. And that's not just games in the UK. I've seen games in America as well. But I'm looking forward to the game because I love Justin Jefferson. He's one of my favorite wide receivers. Like I loved him coming out of college, and he was my dynasty wide receiver rookie 1 when he came out of college. I'm so looking forward to watching him play. I hope Dalvin Cook plays because I'm a FSU fan from college, and that's where Dalvin Cook come from. So I'd love to see him play. Whether he does or not with that injury, who knows? I mean, it's an iffy one. What do I think will happen? Is this a primetime game for Kirk Cousins? We know what happens when Kirk Cousins goes on primetime. So is it a primetime game? I don't know. Would you call it a primetime game?
It's something, isn't it? Like, it's probably a bit... There'll be more publicity on it than a 6 p.m. kickoff. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, we've seen what happens to him when he goes on these primetime games. It's weird, and the Saints defense is a very good unit.
Yeah.
I do think the Vikings will win, but I can see it being a close game. I'm going to probably I'll go 2017 to the Vikings.
So, from before the start of the season, when I jumped on with Andy Davis, he's actually in America now, touring loads of stadiums, vlogging while he's out there, and he's there for 3 months. But I jumped on with him before the season. He had a fan from every team. Obviously, when the Vikings turn, it was me. And I said from then, I don't think we'll beat the Saints in London.
Yeah.
But purely because Alvin Kamara ruined my Christmas the other year. No, the Vikings, I think we can do it. I really do. Even with the showing against Philly, like you say, Kirk Cousins, deer in headlights.
Yeah.
Bounced straight back against Detroit. They started really well, but the second half was much better. And yeah, like look what happens when you use other receivers, like he did with Detroit. Justin Jefferson was being he got boxed out of the game because they were putting everybody on him. Jeff Okuda is still a badass, and
Yep.
I just think I don't know. It will be close.
I suppose
It's
Lattimore
hard to say.
Lattimore shadow Justin Jefferson in this game, wouldn't he? It's a shame it's not Tampa versus the Saints with Evans because yeah, that did make me laugh the other week when I watched that.
Oh, that was so fun.
Yeah.
That was. I watched that one video easily double figure times. Easily.
Those two hate each other, so he's a wind-up merchant, Lattimore, as well. So it'd be interesting to see what happens if he gets in Justin Jefferson's ears.
I honestly don't think Evans would have even come back off the sideline if it wasn't Lattimore starting with Brady.
Oh no, he wouldn't have. No. He hates him. He hates him.
He does. Flip it now. That was absolutely fantastic viewing. If you've not seen it, go on YouTube and just Google Tampa, New Orleans brawl or whatever you want to call it, and it will pop up. It was absolutely fantastic viewing. But let's wrap it up now anyway. We always do this at the end of the show. It's prediction time again for next week. So we'll start with the quarterback. And who do you think is going to be the QB1 for this week?
Lamar Jackson. The guy's just doing it like insane. I was a bit worried after week 1 because we didn't see all the rushing stuff that he normally does. But I mean, he's now gone back-to-back weeks with over 100 rushing yards in each game. He's getting it done with his arm as well. This game has shootout potential against the Bills, so I love him for fantasy and DFS purposes, obviously. And this Bills secondary is beaten up. They got pounded in the heat in Miami, and they were starting 6th-round rookies at corner against Miami. So I think Lamar will tear them up.
And my pick is the other side of this game. It's obviously Josh Allen for almost identical reasons that you've picked Lamar, with the other team's secondary and how banged up they are. I think there's no question about it. It'll be a shootout. Lamar's been fantastic through the air this year compared to previous years, and obviously has the rushing upside. But the Ravens, they let up fantasy points to wide receivers at abundance.
Yep.
Now, Josh Allen's got 2 very good ones. Don't know how much up to speed Gabriel Davis is going to be, but I think it'll be either Josh Allen or Lamar being the QB1 this week. And yeah, I think it comes from that game, whoever's going to be the QB1.
Yeah, I agree. That game will be very popular for DFS. So if you're playing large field tournaments in DFS, probably best to avoid it.
And it's not on game, and it's not on Sky, so I hope you got Game Pass. But running back, Jack, who you got?
Run CMC. So I told you earlier that I'm going to pick on Arizona all year, and the Panthers obviously go to Arizona, take on them. No running back in the league has a higher snap percentage at the position than run CMC. And as I mentioned earlier, this guy's not affected by the game script. I think this will be a bit of a get right game for CMC because we've not seen that blow up game from him as of yet. We'll see that this week against this awful Arizona defense. Pick on them for fantasy.
I embrace the slide of him so much this year. And, he's been ticking along. He's not been doing bad, but he's not been putting up his numbers.
Yeah.
So, especially in Warrior Bowl 0-3, I could really do with it, Christian McCaffrey, if you can come through. But I'm going Saquon Barkley. You basically mentioned everything Wyatt earlier. He looks absolutely fantastic so far this season. And he faces the Bears, who are very bad against rushing. Damian Pierce put up great numbers last week. Saquon Barkley is Damian Pierce plus $1 million.
Yeah.
They're 2 different kettle of fish. Like, there's nothing really more to say on it. The Bears are bad against running backs. And Saquon Barkley is absolutely fantastic, and he looks like Saquon Barkley.
No, agreed.
Go on then. Wide receiver.
Armar St. Brown. This kid, I love watching this kid. He is elite, and Jared Goff loves him. Like Jared Goff zones in on him like he did with Cooper Cup in Los Angeles. The Seahawks defense is far from what that Legion of Boom defense that everyone remembers from years and years ago now, and it just got carved up by Mariota and Carl Pitts. So I'm sure Jared Goff, and as long as he's healthy, that's the only thing. I have a little worry that he might not be healthy for this game. But if he's healthy, Amon-Ra St. Brown will go nuts this week. If not him, if he's not healthy, I'll go with Cooper Kupp.
If he's 100%,
yeah,
there's no way that the Seahawks are stopping him. Absolutely no way. I'm going back to that Buffalo-Baltimore game for mine, and Stephon Diggs. It's a great matchup for the Buffalo wide receivers this week, like I said, with the Baltimore secondary banged up. And he's having a very good year. Similar to when he first went to Buffalo, because last season he sort of dropped off a little bit. I think teams knew more what they were going to get from him. But then this year he seems back. But we don't need to elaborate on that no more, I don't think. So I'll jump straight into tight end. And I went for Dawson Knox last week, which absolutely was a shovel to my face because he was rubbish. And it might happen again. TJ Hawkinson against Seattle. So other than week 2 against the Niners, who didn't have Kittle, they've been very poor against the tight end. Over 230 yards allowed on 14 catches so far. Hawkinson's obviously had a slow start, but he scored last week against the Vikings. And as we mentioned, Amon-Ra St. Brown might not be 100%. So Hawkinson could see a little more of an uptick for this one.
Yep. No, I like it. I do worry with Hawkinson that he's used more for blocking nowadays, but yeah, I don't hate it.
Yeah, they've Jared Goff's got himself a few options there in Detroit, and I think they're a sneaky little.
They're a very good offense. They're a very good offense.
If things go their way and they stop letting up as much points as they put up, they could be a little outsider to make some sort of playoff run. But I knew who you was going to pick before you even picked him. But go on, tell us.
Oh, it's Mark Andrews. He's the number one tight end. He's the number one tight end in fantasy. And look, we saw it last week against the Patriots. What is Bill Belichick renowned for doing against opposing offenses? Taking away the number one option. He didn't do that last week. Mark Andrews absolutely carved that Patriots defense up. Again, it's going back to the well. It's going back to that game, which is going to have a high score in total in the Ravens versus Buffalo. Buffalo are beating up. Hyde's obviously injured. He's out for the year. They're beating up in the secondary. Andrews is the red zone target for this team. I would not be surprised to see him fall in the end zone at least twice in this game.
Plus, Lamar has been a lot more prolific through the air this year as well.
Yeah, Andrews is number one receiver on that team. Like everyone, I love Rashad Bateman. Andrews is the number one receiver on that team.
Going back to Bill Belichick, because it's always fun to have a little dig when you can, but maybe that game where Bateman put up over 100 yards has just confuzzled his head a little bit last week, and he's put everybody on him instead of Andrews. You don't know, do you? Old age, maybe.
I don't think it was a wise decision anyway.
No. But that is that basically for week 3 recap and the week 4 review. If you're in London and you see me, say hello. If you see Jack, say hello. But tell everybody what you're going to be up to again this season, Jack, and give them a little reminder where they can find you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at Jack Humphrey KM. All my work's there, so there's links to my Substack, and just head over to touchdowntips.com on their website, and you'll see all my weekly DraftKings picks and plays and things like that. My article that I do there, and yeah, hopefully I'll have one for the London game this week as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, give Jack a follow, and if you're on Twitter, jump on ours as well at Fantasy Knuts UK for details of our next show and all that good stuff. Thanks for tuning in again, Jack. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And it is London Games week 4. Let's have a blast. Good night.